Bob Dylan says you don't need a weatherman to know which way the wind blows, but more and more people believe there's more than just knowing, but possibly controlling which way the wind blows. So weather modification, sometimes called geoengineering, is becoming a popular topic these days. In fact, there are two bills in the state legislature this session that would ban geoengineering methods aiming to change the weather. I spoke to a sponsor of one of those bills, Kentucky House Representative Jon Hodson, and take a listen to what he had to say. Representative Hodson, so your bill is aiming toward geoengineering, would make it a felony. So tell us exactly, for those who don't know, what is geoengineering?
Well, it's something that nobody knew existed a few years ago, but it's the idea that mankind can go into the upper atmosphere and do what they call stratospheric aerosol injection and inject chemicals into the upper atmosphere to do things like solar radiation modification. And they would inject metallic substances like aluminum flakes or salt crystals or other chemicals to reflect solar radiation at 35,000 feet and prevent that from reaching the Earth, therefore cooling the Earth and addressing what some perceive as a global warming crisis. It's been experimented with in other places. The Congress actually asked the White House to produce a position paper on solar radiation modification, which they did under the Biden White House. That was put out. It was on the White House website until recently. And the Trump administration has taken that down. I think that's a signal from the Trump administration. They've got no interest in pursuing that. Nonetheless, there are actors both in our government and in foreign governments and in the scientific community that want to try this. And I think it's hubris to think that we're going to go, fly enough airplanes high in the air and spray stuff in the atmosphere to cool the Earth off, not knowing what effect that's going to have widespread on the Earth. And whatever you spray at 35,000 feet eventually drifts down through the air and lands on our cropland. Things like aluminum could be very dangerous for people to because it accumulates in the soil and accumulates in the food that we eat that can have bad effects on the central nervous system. So we're just saying, if you want to experiment with that, I guess you can, but don't do it over Kentucky. And if you do that and we catch you, we're going to fine you very, very heavily. We're going to make that a felony. I don't have any knowledge or proof that anybody's doing that over Kentucky now, but Tennessee passed a similar piece of legislation last year, and we are following suit. And I think a number of other states will as well. So it's a crazy idea. We just don't want you to do it here.
Okay. So we don't have any proof that is happening here now, but it seems like more and more people are starting to think that geoengineering is happening. And I mean, I know I see chemtrails in the news more often and the concern about that. And you had a long career in aviation. What are your constituents saying, and how do you respond to that?
So everybody looks up in the sky and sees white streaks up there that are following jet airplanes. If you go on something like Flight Radar 24, you can figure out pretty quickly what airplane that is. It's Delta, UPS, Southwest. And you can be 99.99% sure that one of those flights is not spraying something out the back end of the airplane, because every ounce of fuel that goes into that airplane is heavily measured and regulated. But there could be, unknown to us, some actors, dark planes up there spraying something I don't know. We haven't found them. We haven't caught them. That could be happening. But the vast majority of what you see in the sky every day is ordinary jet condensation trails, contrails. You burn hydrocarbon fuels in the atmosphere. The hydrogen combines with oxygen in the air and produces water vapor. That's what you see up there that's white. And then the carbon combines with oxygen and produces CO2. So those are pollutants, not necessarily good for us, but to get rid of those, you'd have to get rid of jet aviation. And on days where the humidity is high in the upper atmosphere, you see a lot of white streaks in the sky. On a day like today, I'm looking out the window. I don't see a streak in the sky. It's low humidity, so we're not seeing contrails. They form based on weather conditions at 35,000 feet. The airline industry actually looked at dropping the altitude of flights from about 35,000 down to about 25 to where those contrails would not form. But the extra fuel burn is so much that you actually create more atmospheric pollution overall by trying to avoid the white streaks. At any given time, there's 6,000 to 8,000 flights over America, jet flights over America that may or may not be leaving contrails. The only way to get clear skies is to ground jet aviation. But there is some confusion, I think, between what's a contrail and what's a chemtrail. And the only way you could ever prove that is to get an airplane on the ground, find if it's equipped with, spray rigs and spray tanks to spray chemicals in the air. Because there are airplanes that are equipped to do that. I've not ever seen one in my career, but I've seen pictures, and obviously people have experimented in other places in other countries with this sort of atmospheric modification.
Okay. Now, with atmospheric modification, does that include cloud seeding, which we do know goes on, not I haven't seen any proof, documented proof for Kentucky, but that's a common thing that happens in Western U.S.
Yes.
and in plain states. Would this ban that?
Well, we don't have cloud seeding in Kentucky right now, according to the gentleman I spoke to from that industry last week. There's 8 or 10 Western states where they do that. They typically do that at much lower altitude. It's at 15,000 feet or below. It's over a very geographically defined area, maybe 100 square miles or less, over a ski area or something like that to try to make it snow more. So yes, this would probably ban that activity in Kentucky, but they're not doing it now. It's possible we could put some, carve out language in the future if cloud seeding became something the public thought was a good idea. But we've got plenty of water here now, plenty of rain and snow. We occasionally get drought conditions, but there are risks associated with cloud seeding that you might create too much rain, or you might create, a drought condition for your neighbor nearby.
Yeah.
So something I think we need to look at regulating before we try that in Kentucky.
Your bill that aims to ban geoengineering, what is the harm that your bill and bills like that are aiming to avoid?
The harm we're aiming to avoid is unintended consequences. First off, if you intend to block solar radiation and you're successful at doing that, it will get cooler on the earth. That sounds like a good idea, but it might not be, because that's going to interfere with the solar panels on my roof. That's going to interfere with crop yields. It'll make you have to turn the thermostat up on the house to get the house warmer, because it's cooling things off. And you can, just like when we have an eclipse, if you were standing outside when the sun was blocked, it got cooler and darker, and I don't think that's necessarily a good thing. But the other thing is the spraying chemicals in the upper atmosphere that are potentially hazardous, and having those filter down from 35,000 feet and bioaccumulate in the soils. We don't need more aluminum and heavy metals and other chemicals like that in our soil getting into our food supply. And Kentucky is a part of the breadbasket of America. We make a lot of grain and a lot of meat, and those chemicals get into the food we eat, and that's a dangerous thing. So we're just saying, things could possibly change at some point in the future, but don't want any government actors or private party actors spraying stuff in our upper atmosphere to block sunlight that's going to get into our food supply.
Okay. Representative Hodson, thank you so much for sharing
Sure.
your time and expertise with us.
Glad to. Thank you.